Bonjour. Alors, j'ai quelques questions à vous poser. I have some questions for you. Est-ce que tu habites à la campagne ou en ville? Hein? Est-ce que tu habites à la campagne ou en ville? Go and answer. Okay. Ask me. Oh, okay, I'll give you some help. Right? Don't say tu. That's an insult. I'm a teacher. Okay. Okay, you should have said, est-ce que vous habitez à la campagne ou en ville? Moi, j'habite à la campagne. Je n'habite pas en ville. Okay, let's try the second kind of question now. Tu habites. Habites-tu dans une maison ou dans un appartement? Habites-tu dans une maison ou dans un appartement? Okay, now ask me. Remember, don't use tu. That's insulting. Okay, use. Okay. So we get vous habitez, right? Okay, hopefully you said habitez-vous dans une maison ou dans un appartement? Well, moi personnellement, j'habite dans une maison. Je n'habite pas dans un appartement. Let's go back to est-ce que. Est-ce que tu habites en France, aux États-Unis ou au Québec? Est-ce que tu habites en France, aux États-Unis ou au Québec? Okay, now ask me. Use est-ce que. Bon, j'habite aux États-Unis. Au moins, maintenant, j'habite aux États-Unis. Hein? Je n'habite pas en France. Et je n'habite pas au Québec. Okay. Not bad, not bad. It's a start. But weren't there some things in those statements in the lesson, as well as in these questions, that are a little troubling? Did you notice that we changed the wording in a way that you would never do in English? In English, we say, I live in the country, in the city, in a house, in an apartment, in France, in Quebec, in the United States. It's the same preposition that's called every time. In. There were some other changes, which are called, we're dealing with articles, they're called. Definite and indefinite articles, the words for a, and, some, the. We're going to deal with those in an upcoming lesson. Those changes that occur in French, I can explain those for the most part. But why do we say à la campagne, but en ville? Why do we say dans une maison? What are these changes about? From à la campagne to en ville to dans une maison. Why à in one sentence, but en another, and dans in the third? That's troubling. How in the world are you going to learn those distinctions? Like a child, hopefully. Like a child. That is to say, because truly, as far as French is concerned, at this point you are infants and children, linguistically. And so, how are you going to learn? How does a child learn those distinctions as he or she is growing up in France? Well, as an infant and as a very young child, children do a great deal of listening. They listen for months before they ever start speaking the language. And then once they start speaking, and of course they do it in a faulty way, and then they're corrected. And then they go back and they'll say it again the next time, and maybe they'll make the same mistake, and they're corrected. Until finally, after a great deal of repetition, they start to say things correctly, without anyone ever explaining to them, well, in this case, with this preposition is used, or in this case, we use this different. No, it's through listening, and then taking the risk, the gamble of speaking, and then being corrected, going back, listening, speaking, listening again, repeating, and last of all, and I'll explain this in a second, patience. I'll talk about patience in a moment. Let me take those other steps right now and show you how they refer to the ULAT. When you're in a ULAT lesson and you see this symbol right here, it means that you're simply to listen. And so you click and you listen attentively and you make mental observations. You note distinctions in the way certain words or phrases are said. And then you'll see this symbol. It means it's time for you to take the risk of actually making the statement yourself, hypothesizing as to how you think things should be said, and basing as much as you can on memory of what you've heard. And then you're going to click on the statement that you have just made, and you'll see whether or not you said it correctly. That's the stage of being corrected by whoever it was that taught you language. And then you'll repeat that whole process again. You'll go back if you're struggling with a certain issue in the language. You go back and listen to the section again where that issue is being highlighted, and then you'll speak and you'll say the statement, and then you'll click and you'll listen again, and you repeat that until you have success. That repetition of that cycle of listening, speaking, listening again, repeating the process, that's simulating what goes on for months and months of the life of a French child who eventually learns never to make certain kinds of mistakes that for us are very easy to make. And so certain kinds of issues in French can be explained through grammatical presentations that I can make to you. Although I'll tell you that even if I can explain things to you grammatically, that is not the best way to learn to speak a language fluently. It's through listening, repetition, taking a chance, and then listening and being corrected again. That process is the best manner in which to learn a language. If I fill your mind with rules, for example, right now I'm teaching you about verb conjugation, I could tell you a whole lot more right now if I could show you the printed word. But it's totally unnecessary and useless, really. It would fill your mind with rules that you'd have to think through before you could speak, that would hinder your ability to attain fluency. Just listen, take a chance, say things, listen again, repeat the process until certain patterns of speech become natural to you. Okay, well that's what I mentioned. I talk about patience too. This is an important issue. If you have a classroom teacher, it's critical that your classroom teacher places essence over form. When a child begins to speak for the first time as maybe a 16-month or 17-month or 18-month-old child, and they see a tow truck going down the road, not knowing what it is, and they say, car. The parents don't say, what's wrong with you? That's not a car. That's a tow truck. Come on, get it right. Now repeat, tow truck. No, the parents, when the child says car, the parents are delighted. They think their kid is brilliant. They start getting ready to enroll them at Harvard. They think they're wonderful. That's how your teacher needs to be dealing with you as well. If your statements at this point are comprehensible, you have succeeded. You're a victor. If there are some problems with form, as you gain the confidence to speak with a lot of praise, a lot of support, a lot of encouragement from your teacher, he or she can start to slowly refine your speech. Well, if you don't have a classroom teacher, patience. Patience in a couple of ways. Be patient when the statements that you make don't necessarily match up exactly with what you hear when you click on the statement in the ULAT. Just go back and repeat. Go back and repeat. But remember that if you are transmitting a message which is comprehensible, you're already being very successful. Secondly, what does faire mean? Maybe you already know that. What does dire mean? Maybe you've already figured it out. But if you have an idea, but you're not certain exactly how you would translate that to English, good. I don't want you to translate in your mind. And I try to avoid it as much as I can as I work with you here. And in the same way, if your sense of exactly what a certain word means is still vague, fine. Don't worry about it. Be patient. Over the course of weeks as we work together, the sense of how those words are used and how they're used in French, not in English, will become more and more clear. Be patient with imprecise understanding of the meaning of vocabulary at first, because a little child similarly has that same imprecision of understanding. Well, I hope that's helpful. That little philosophical rambling there is helpful for you as you as you study French and you come to things that you don't quite understand. You don't understand why they are as they are. Be patient, listen, take a chance, say something, click, listen again, go back, repeat the process, but move on with encouragement to know that you are communicating ideas successfully, if not perfectly at this point. Lesson 1.9, into which you will go at this point, is a lesson that deals simply with verb conjugation. That is to say, how a subject and a verb are put together. There's not much else I need to say because the lesson is very straightforward. You will have, nonetheless, a test at the end of the lesson. And so we'll practice the test in the course of the next video. Okay. Au revoir.